There's an old joke somewhere about why an atheist wore red suspenders. You give up? To keep his pants from being taken up to heaven during the rapture. It's corny, I know. Yeah, I'm an atheist and I usually get flack from my friends, family, and coworkers about my beliefs. To believe in some higher power that is going to either reward you or punish you seems a bit odd in my book. I wasn't always this way, as I was born into a Catholic family and went to church with my father every Sunday. We grew up in a small suburb, and while we weren't rich, we didn't have to scrounge for food either. I lived a comfortable childhood with my mom and my big sister, and life was grand. Heck, we even had my grandma living downstairs in a separate apartment, and things were pretty good. That was until we found out she had died in the hospital. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let me rewind a bit. My parents, with my aunts and uncles, went to Atlantic City with my grandma, as she loved it there. However, as she was getting up, she took a nasty fall and was hospitalized. She was in there for days as my mom and dad went to visit her, and I was usually left at home. I remember praying a lot, asking God to save her, even though she was in her mid-80s. She never made it out of that godforsaken place. Days later was the funeral, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 9 or 10 years old, and I was surrounded by my aunts and uncles, crying over the loss of this great lady. Everyone told me it was okay to cry, but I didn't. I felt like I didn't need to or want to. I felt like I had to be strong for my family, and I didn't cry. I was sad that my grandma was gone, but I wanted to be there for my family. Right then and there, I decided to denounce God. Oh sure, I went to a Catholic high school, and to get away from the god-awful public school that had drugs, gangs, guns, and fights. And what did my school have? All of the above, plus we had to wear stupid uniforms. I felt like I went to prison for 4 years, and it didn't help to have a vice principal that was a raging alcoholic. From high school to college to working at a dead-end job at some major corporation in the middle of Manhattan, life seemed to be good, as I wasn't being forced to move out by my parents. Heck, they wanted me to stay, and I wanted to, so what's the harm, right? Life was alright, until the day that I almost died. It was smack dab in the middle of summer, and I tell you, if you've never been to NYC during the season, don't. You're not missing a thing. The heat paired with the oppressive humidity makes for some really bad days. So, I'm making my way to work and we get to the stop right underneath the World Trade Center. The train jerks to a halt as the doors open and close around 5 to 6 times. When they closed for the 6th time, we all held our collective breath as the garbled announcement boomed forth from grime-encrusted speakers. Attention all passengers, this train is currently out of service. Please disembark and wait for the next train. I cursed inwardly, however. A majority of my fellow subway riders cursed right out loud, as if those were a plea to God to fix the train. Unfortunately, those all fell on deaf ears and we had to leave the train, and I looked at my watch. 7:15 a.m. I had to be at work by 8. And so I said screw it to no one in particular, and made my way out of the station and onto the street. I knew if I cut across the village, I would still be able to make it to work on time if I ran. This was a challenge, plain and simple, as I've never been late before to this job in my life, and I wanted to keep it that way. It was definitely a trek, and I made great time until I crossed the edge of the village. I saw that a crosswalk was about to turn red, and I thought that I could make it before the light changed. I sprinted across the street, oblivious to traffic, and before I knew it, I was flying through the air, You know how people say when you fall or an accident happens, time seems to slow down to almost nothing? That's true. I remember flying through the air, looking at the world upside down, and just hanging there, like I was defying gravity. I don't even remember hitting the ground. I remember hanging there, and as I was descending, a wall of blackness seemed to rise up to meet me. And that's all there was for a while. Darkness. Hello. I called out, but the only thing I heard was my own voice echo back at me, like I was in a massive, dark cavern. I took a few tentative steps forward, and felt that I could move, but it felt like I wasn't going anywhere. It could have been minutes, days or months, and I had no idea how long this was at the time, and it was a foreign construct here. Was this it? Was I dead? Part of me wanted to scream, cry, laugh, curse, but in the end, I just started walking. Wasn't there supposed to be a light? I just said out loud, hoping someone, something would answer my questions. I would walk in one direction, stop, and then continue in another direction. I felt like this was one of the video games that I used to play when I was younger. There is an exit to this level, and I only have to find it. However, I also felt that I was an intruder in this realm of shadows. I couldn't hear anything but my own footsteps, breathing in voice that echoed when I talked. At this point in time, I realized that I indeed must have been dead, and I started to laugh. Not the way that people laugh at a good joke. How people laugh when they have lost any sanity they had left. I screamed and laughed until my throat was raw, and I felt that in my throat and stopped. Panting, I tried to reason with myself. Okay, you have a sore throat and you're panting, so you can't be dead, right? And that's when I heard it, as if it was an answer to my question. It was a soft ding, followed by the scraping of metal. I took a step, followed by another into the direction of the sound. I felt like it was in a darkened corridor, and I could see to the end of it as if it was brightly illuminated. The end of the hallway looked like a nook of a hotel lobby, however. There was only one elevator, and the doors were wide open, as if they were waiting for me. I started to run, and it seemed at first this was an optical illusion, or one of those bad dreams. You know the ones, right? Where you want to get somewhere and you're running at full tilt, but you seem to be getting nowhere. It was exactly like that. At first, I thought about stopping and giving up on this altogether. However, I pressed on and I found myself rushing forward at great speed. So much, in fact, that I skidded to a halt before I crashed into the back of the elevator. I felt a sense of déjà vu, as the elevator looked exactly like the one at my job. There was only one button. No floors, no door open or close, no emergency stop. Nothing. I looked around, shrugged, and then hit the one button as it illuminated, and the doors slid closed with the same slow, grinding metallic noise. Have you ever been on an express elevator? The sensation as if you're going to be rocketed into space is quite unnerving the first time that you experience it. Losing all sense of time and space, I was wondering if I was moving too fast or not at all, as I had no idea how many minutes before the elevator finally jerked to a halt. A loud ding followed by the scraping noise of the metal doors opening, and the first thing I had to do was shield my eyes. The light was almost blinding as I felt my eyes starting to adjust for being in the dark for so long. Spots danced and then faded from my vision as I was in another long white hallway, with another set of double doors that were wide open. Hello, I called out timidly, as if I was a child that was caught doing something bad. Yes, my child. Please come here. An unknown, fatherly voice called out from down the hall. I froze. There was something or someone that was on this floor with me. Two instincts struggled deep within me, which every animal on this planet possesses: fight or flight. I chose to fight as part of me wanted to know where I was and what was going on. Gathering up remaining courage I had, I walked down the long corridor and found myself in a plush office that would rival some of the CEOs that I had worked under. What had stunned me the most were the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over an expanse of fluffy clouds. These clouds obscured anything that was below the surface, so there was no way to judge how high this structure was. The doors were of a wood that I had never seen before, as various animals were carved into intricate patterns upon it. From small beetles to giant whales and everything in between, it was displayed in amazing detail. Come in, my child, and have a seat. A voice commanded from behind a high-backed leather chair. The chair was facing the window and I could barely make out the arms and legs of the figure sitting in it. I caught glimpses of an expensive suit, but I couldn't place the make as it could have been tailor-made. A small, empty office chair greeted me, as a lavish oak desk separated the two of us. So, what brings you here, my child? He asked in an inquisitive tone. It isn't quite your time, and I have no idea why your soul has sought me out. I had no idea what to say to this, as I had no idea why I was here either. It was as if I was called to the principal's office over something that I wasn't even a part of. I cleared my throat before asking, Are you, well? God, he answered. Some may call me that. Some call me the Alpha and the Omega, or Yahweh or Buddha or Jehovah. But they are all the same name for me, however. I sense that you do not believe in me, my child. I bowed my head in shame, as if I was being scolded by my father. Well, no, sir. I heard the chair swivel around, however. I was still looking downwards, and I could only see his shoes. This being wore some of the nicest wingtips I had ever seen, and it must have cost a small fortune. Good, he said. It is more important that you believe in yourself than in me. There are people that believe their whole lives in me and have done nothing for themselves. You, on the other hand, have accomplished great things on your own, without asking me for help, and for that, I applaud you, my child. I still kept my head down as I heard this being come from behind their desk and stand directly in front of me. Why will you not look upon me, my child? He asked quizzically. I slowly picked up my head, as my mind took in all of the sights that came before me. I saw that this being was impeccably dressed in a very expensive gray suit, with dress pants and a jacket. I noticed that every part of him was clad in some type of cloth or fabric. As my eyes traveled upwards, I finally came to his neck and his face. His face. Have you ever been inside of a department store and seen those mannequins? Those featureless heads that almost look egg-shaped. It looked like that, but instead, it was alabaster white, and I continued to stare at it. And it changed. A thin, blood-red line ran from the top to the bottom of its face, and it bloomed open, showing an exposed muscle-red interior. A single, bloodshot eye seemed to bore into my soul, as a countless number of tongues seemed to reach out from me like tentacles. The edges of that white exterior seemed to sprout rows and rows of sharp teeth. I remember waking up screaming in the hospital, as I thrashed in my bed. A squad of nurses came in to restrain me, and they were losing even though I had a few broken ribs and a broken leg. There was a sharp pain in my shoulder, and I remember blacking out as I slumped into my sweat-drenched bed. Hours later, I woke up but I felt calmer, as I tried to assure myself that the whole thing was a fever dream. I rang the nurse who came in and smiled, saying that I looked better, and asked me for my name. I gave it to her and asked her what had happened, and she told me that I was hit by a drunk driver. The guy had tried to leave the scene, however, and he was apprehended by the cops. "Just rest for right now," she assured me. "You're going to be just fine." And I settled back into my bed and tried to sleep, and I found that I simply couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see that horrific visage. The bloodshot eye, tongues and teeth all reached for me. Even when exhaustion would eventually overtake me, I would sleep in a restless state and wake up more tired than before. The nurses tried to give me medication to try and help me sleep, and it was spotty at best. I would either dream nothing, or have those terrible nightmares of that thing. This thing that claimed to be God. But how do I know it was telling the truth? It could have been anything, or it could have been a hallucination brought on by stress and injury. After spending a few more days of restless sleep in the hospital, I was discharged, as my mom, dad, and sister picked me up. They smiled as they eased me into the backseat of their car as we sped off for home. I gritted my teeth with every jostle and bump as the pain would lace through my body. As I got back home to the forgotten borough known as Staten Island, I remember going to my room and seeing a flood of messages on my answering machine. There were a ton of messages from various law firms who wanted to represent me. I had done a lot of research and picked the best one to represent me in court. To make a long story short, I had taken the driver and the company he worked for to court. It was an open and shut case, as they tried to settle with a very low figure. However, the judge saw right through them, and I had gotten a high six-figure settlement from this accident, plus all fees, hospital and doctor bills were paid for. While I was dodging calls from friends and relatives, I thought about what to do with all this money, and I decided where I wanted to settle down. After a few weeks of deciding, I found myself a little place in a suburb of Indianapolis. The combination of purchasing the house outright along with some smart investing it had me set up for life. I would trade it all for the ability to sleep soundly. And for the record, I have tried a lot of different things to dispel these bad dreams. Some of these work from time to time, however, but it seems like this thing finds a way around it and back into my subconscious. I have tried every drug, both legal and highly illegal on this planet, and have only been met with some success. Other things that I've tried are such as hypnotherapy, medication, white noise, sensory deprivation, sleep studies, etc., and so forth. And yet it might be for a few weeks or months, but still, I see that face. There's a reason why I can't sleep, as I saw the true face of God. The dreams that I have been having lately, He's speaking to me, and He says the same thing over and over again. "I cannot wait to see you again, my child. Next time you'll be here for an eternity, and my hunger will be sated at last, as I will feast upon you."